She said it like a punchline. I care about you, but I'm not in love, Sienna announced, swirling her wine with theatrical nonchalance as the table laughed and the skyline glittered behind her like the setup to a bad joke. Her friends, no, our friends, or so I had assumed, giggled behind their napkins. One of the venture guys muttered, savage, and offered a toast in her honor. I sat beside her, hands folded neatly in my lap. No reaction, no rebuttal, just a faint smile. I remember the sound of the steak knives scraping plates, the scent of truffle oil, the way Sienna leaned slightly away from me after the laugh faded, as if I were now too familiar to touch. Like she'd just filed the final paperwork of some private emancipation, and I was supposed to thank her for the favor. She had no idea what she'd just done. That night, back at the apartment she only sometimes remembered to call home, I let her shower first. I even asked if she wanted me to heat up the tea she liked. She mumbled something dismissive, towel around her hair, already scrolling on her phone, probably texting one of her unfiltered girls' chat groups about how Daniel took it well. The second she disappeared into the bathroom, I pulled up the photo album labeled Us on my personal server, an encrypted drive she never had the password to, and deleted it. No hesitation. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I wasn't. That was the problem. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just calculation. Then I opened the folder named Exit Prep. You know, more than 90% of people who listen to stories like this never hit subscribe, and it really helps the team bring you better stories like this one. So if you're still here, hit that button. You won't regret it. I hadn't touched that folder in nearly 14 months. It had been created back when she accidentally FaceTimed me from a hotel room she swore was her stylist's, and the reflection behind her looked a hell of a lot like a man shaving. But I hadn't confronted her then. I don't operate on impulse. I document. I observe. And I build exits like blueprints for a house I hope I never need. Inside the folder were asset logs, soft copies of signed transfer authorizations, power of attorney revocations, a timeline I'd built from whispers she didn't know I heard. A lawyer I trusted once told me, don't serve cold revenge. Serve it silently. Let them think it's weather. Sienna thought I was weather. She was always good at mistaking quiet for spinelessness. Said I had grandpa energy. Called my routines cute. Rolled her eyes when I said things like, grace matters more than noise. That rooftop dinner? She thought it was a triumph. A declaration of independence. She had no idea that half the men at that table had already chosen my side. And I didn't say a single word to ruin the illusion. The next morning, I watched her rehearse a faux surprised reaction for her upcoming philanthropy feature shoot. She even practiced her shocked laugh in the mirror. I sipped my coffee, eyes on her. She paused, noticing. What? Nothing, I said. Just thinking how strange it is what people find funny. She smiled like she'd won. At 58, I was calm, methodical, and quiet. 3 things she associated with being harmless. What she didn't realize is I spent decades mastering one very useful skill. I know how to vanish people from the systems they think they control. She thought she could define the tone, steer the narrative, rewrite what we were. But she'd never stopped to ask what I'd built, what rooms I still controlled, what foundations had my name on the underside, not hers. She thought love was her leash, and she'd finally cut me loose. I let her think that, and then I began pulling the pins she never even noticed I'd placed. She called him a nobody with a checkbook. That's how she introduced me to Calvin Markel 2 years ago at the Astoria Preservation Gala. Said it loud enough for me to hear, and gave me that smug glance she always reserved for when she thought she'd elevated me socially. Calvin runs some mid-tier arts fund, she said. He likes old buildings and older whiskey. I nodded, shook the man's hand, and did what I always do, listened. What Sienna didn't know is that Calvin was neither mid-tier nor old money. He was smart money, the kind that moves quietly, funds causes with long-term payoff, and remembers who smirks in introductions. Calvin and I kept in touch. Nothing overt. Occasional lunches. A few emails. Over time, I folded him into one of my advisory circles. Never told Sienna. Why would I? She was too busy curating her persona as a social alchemist, as she called it, turning Instagram energy into grand invites and guest passes. Fast forward to last week. My assistant, Mira, flagged something. Just FYI, she wrote. Sienna submitted RSVP to the Delancey Arts Gala. Used your name for patron tier access again. I know you declined it last month, so I'm guessing this is unauthorized. She included a screenshot. Sienna's full name. My credentials. Her fake signature for the +1 request. That was the moment I stopped sipping tea and started making calls. Not to Sienna. No confrontation. No fireworks. Just Calvin. He picked up on the second ring. She's using my name to get through your gate. A short pause. Then, do you want her out? Permanently. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. 2 hours later, the RSVP was quietly voided. No message to her. No dramatic reply. Just her name removed from the list by the same board she thought she dazzled. See, Sienna had spent years playing the part of the dazzling accessory. The smart, younger girlfriend with an eye for impact. She threw around buzzwords at fundraisers and practiced her donor face in the mirror. She thought access was style. She didn't realize it was scaffolding. And I was the damn architect. She told people she wanted freedom. Said it like a threat. Like detachment from me was going to launch her into some kind of curated awakening. What she didn't realize was that most of her freedoms were leased. And the terms were up. That week, I noticed another thing. Calvin had been added to our internal foundation Slack group. One I'd been building for 7 years. Not for optics, but for leverage. Quiet men, powerful women, old allies. Sienna didn't know their names, but they knew hers. And they watched. Mira added a comment under the RSVP thread. Let me know if I should notify additional hosts. We can flag her as non-compliant use of patron access. I responded with one word. Flag. No arguments. No dramatic emails. Just digital lights going off one by one in rooms she thought she lit. And the best part? She was still smiling in mirror selfies, captioning them with things like booked and blessed dizzy #Delancey nights, completely unaware that the door was already being welded shut behind her. Sienna built her life on assumed invitations. Assumed power. She assumed I was a background fixture. A banker with good taste and no backbone. She was about to learn that the softest spoken man at the table is often the one choosing who gets to sit there. And she was already on her way out. It started with an email. Subject: Update regarding your RSVP, Delancey Arts Gala. Body: We regret to inform you that your attendance at this year's event has been reconsidered. Due to changes in our guest list criteria, your reservation has been withdrawn. We appreciate your past support. No signature. No explanation. Just a digital shrug. Sienna blinked at it twice, then laughed. Probably a mix-up. She forwarded it to her old PR intern with a casual, "Hey babe, can you fix this?" and didn't give it a second thought. She assumed it would be sorted out within hours. She'd already posted the teaser photo of her gown for the event. Delancey ready. Clinking glasses, let's light up the room. No reply came. Not from the host. Not from her intern. Just nothing. She gave it a day. Then 2. Then texted Calvin directly. Though she had to scroll to find his number, still saved as Whiskey Guy, Gala. He left her on read. Still, she wasn't panicking. Not yet. Then Kat called. Sienna answered on speaker, doing her skincare routine in the mirror. Morning, babe. Can you believe they're gatekeeping the gala now? I swear this city. Kat cut her off. Do you even know who Daniel is? That stopped her. Sienna blinked. Lowered the jade roller from her cheek. What? What are you talking about? I mean, you must know, right? Kat's voice was tight, like someone who had just realized the floor was made of glass. You've been with him for years? Sienna laughed. What? Is he some secret agent or something? You sound like you watched a conspiracy documentary. No, Kat said. Not that. It's worse. He's someone who can erase your name from a guest list without being in the room. Silence. Sienna's smile dimmed, just slightly. Wait, what are you talking about? I don't know exactly, but I overheard something at the studio brunch. Something about pulling names and removing legacy access. Then I saw Calvin's face when your name came up. It went cold. Like executive cold. Sienna sat down slowly, the serum still drying on her face. Daniel wouldn't do that. He's not like that. He's quiet, Kat said. Exactly. He's the kind of quiet that means control, not passivity. That word hung in the air. Control. Kat hesitated. You told me once he was just good for stability, remember? That he knows his lane. Sienna felt heat rise in her neck. He does. I mean, he's not. Not what? Kat said. Not powerful. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. They hung up shortly after. Sienna told herself Kat was just being dramatic. That people exaggerate. That Daniel didn't care about social games. He hated all that scene politics. That's why she liked dragging him into it. He grounded her. Or maybe he just made her look more grounded. But when she tried to resubmit her RSVP to the gala under a different email, it bounced. When she tried to DM the event coordinator, seen. No reply. And when she checked the Delancey Gala Instagram story later that night, she saw a shot of the seating chart with names blurred, except one. A single nameplate shown clearly in the center of the table, Daniel Rourke. She stared at the screen, then looked at herself. For the first time in years, her reflection didn't look invincible. The first domino had fallen, and the sound it made wasn't loud. It was surgical. And the worst part? She had no idea how many more were already tipping. The email came at 6:12 a.m., an unusually early hour for a PR firm that usually didn't start spinning until after their almond lattes arrived. Subject: Representation Update. Body: Due to internal restructuring, we regret to inform you that we will no longer be able to support your media engagements moving forward. We appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you and wish you continued success. No call, no warning, not even a courtesy CC to her agent. Sienna sat in bed blinking at it. For a second, she genuinely thought it was a mistake. She hit reply, typed, "Hi babe, is this real?" then deleted it. No one on that team was babe anymore, apparently. She refreshed the page. Nothing changed. A half hour later, her Instagram DMs exploded, not with fan questions or brand inquiries, but confusion. Wait, is the serum launch canceled? Why did Solskin delete your promo video? Did you get dropped? Sienna blinked hard, pulled up Solskin's page. Not only had her collab post vanished, but the entire influencer spotlight section was gone, like it had never existed. She called her contact there, straight to voicemail, texted twice. Hey, something wrong with the campaign? No reply. Then a final message came through. One line. No emoji. No warmth. It's been advised we distance. You should talk to Daniel. She dropped the phone. And for the first time in years, Sienna's carefully polished confidence cracked. Not from a scandal, not from an expose, but from absence. No one was accusing her of anything. They were simply stepping back. Quietly. Decisively. She tried to distract herself. Posted a throwback photo of her at last year's museum fundraiser. Captioned, "Always forward direct hit #ArtLovers." Within minutes, 3 people who'd liked her post unfollowed. She got a text from Elise, a former co-chair at the Downtown Foundation. They hadn't spoken in months, but the message hit like a tranquilizer dart dipped in acid. What did you do to Daniel? That was it. No context. No tone. Just a question that assumed everything. She stared at it, then back at the screen. What had she done? She told the truth. At dinner. In front of people. She said she cared, but wasn't in love. That was supposed to be empowering. Bold. Real. Wasn't that what people wanted these days? Authenticity? She didn't scream. Didn't cheat. Didn't sabotage. But somehow, her words had cracked something deeper. And now, everything was retracting. Like the tide before a tsunami. Invitations stopped arriving. One after another. Events she hadn't even RSVP'd to yet suddenly filled up. Even her assistant, who had been quietly with her for 3 years, asked to transition to freelance opportunities. Sienna stood in the middle of her sunlit kitchen, holding a crystal glass of orange juice, barefoot on heated floors, and felt something new, irrelevance. She once mocked Daniel for avoiding the cocktail circuit, for dodging panels and skipping after-parties. She'd call him Mr. Anti-Scene, said it playfully in public, but with a sharpness in private. Now she was the one outside the glass, and the people inside weren't looking back. The scariest part wasn't the doors closing. It was that no one felt the need to explain. The first time she saw the red banner across the top of the login page, she thought it was a glitch. Access denied. Your account has been suspended pending verification. Sienna blinked. Refreshed. Tried the backup email. Same result. The shared property account. The one with all the household utilities, the penthouse upkeep fees, even the stupid biometric settings for the private elevator, was locked. She opened the app on her phone. Blank. No name. No user privileges. At first, she thought it was some system update Daniel had forgotten to tell her about. He hated notifications. Maybe he didn't even realize it had booted her. She slipped on sandals, threw on a robe, and took the private elevator down to the concierge desk. Eli was on shift. Polite, pressed, and suddenly different. "Morning, Miss Trammell," he said, with a tight, professional smile. Not friendly. Not rude. Just cold. "Hey, yeah, weird question. I can't access the building account. And my fob won't let me into the gym either. Is something wrong with the system?" Eli checked the screen. "No, ma'am. The system's fine." She raised a brow. "Okay, so what's going on?" He cleared his throat. "Mr. Rourke requested all non-primary residents have guest privileges revoked." Sienna laughed once. "Guest privileges? I live here." Eli hesitated. "Not according to our updated lease." Something in her spine tightened. "Let me speak to Daniel. Or your building manager. This is absurd." A couple passed behind her, middle-aged, dressed for brunch. They slowed, just slightly, overhearing. Her voice rose. I'm not some stranger, Eli. I co-hosted the last 3 fundraising receptions in the Sky Lounge. I understand, he said, but our instructions came directly from legal. Everything's been updated per tenancy law. Legal. And then, like a bad stage cue, he walked in. Malcolm Shaw, Daniel's lawyer. Not just a lawyer. The lawyer, the one who drafted the staggered trust disbursements, the multi-property ownership restructures, the airtight exit clauses. He strolled past the desk with his briefcase, nodded politely to Eli, and didn't even look in Sienna's direction. She stepped forward. Malcolm. Nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition. He pressed the elevator button. Waited. Stepped in. Gone. Sienna stood in the marble lobby, still in her robe, a few strands of hair escaping the clip behind her head. The couple at the far end of the room were now whispering, whether about her or not. It didn't matter. Her cheeks flushed. She turned back to Eli. You're saying I can't go up? I'm saying the system won't let you, he replied. Not I'm sorry. Not let me help. Just a line drawn in software and law. Her phone buzzed. An alert. Your access to smart home features has been revoked by the administrator. She read it twice. She had laughed once. Months ago, when Daniel explained how the apartment's entire infrastructure was wired through a single point of control. That's dangerous, she'd said, half joking. What if someone locks me out? He'd replied, without looking up from his tablet. Then you'd probably deserve it. She thought it was a joke. Now, the air-conditioned silence of the lobby felt colder than it should have. Not because she was uncomfortable, but because she suddenly realized she no longer knew where she stood. Not in the building. Not in his life. Not even in her own story. The invitation came as a text. No preamble. No emojis. Just a location, a time, and the words, let's talk. Dinner. It made her pulse jump in a way she hadn't felt in weeks. Not panic. Not hope. Something deeper. A flicker of control, maybe. She spent nearly an hour choosing what to wear. Settled on something elegant but familiar, deep navy silk, fitted, the kind of dress he used to pause at the zipper of. She wore the perfume he once called hypnotic. She arrived 15 minutes late, deliberately, as if to remind him that some dynamics hadn't changed. But he didn't seem affected at all. Daniel sat at a small table near the window of a private club tucked behind unmarked doors. Quiet, candlelit, timeless. She recognized none of the faces around them. Older men in tailored jackets, women with no visible social media presence, the kind of wealth that didn't flaunt itself because it didn't need to. He stood when she arrived. No smile. No kiss on the cheek. Just a polite nod. She slid into the chair opposite him. Wasn't sure you still used words, she said, tossing her clutch on the table. He lifted the wine menu. I've always used words. Just not when applause is the goal. They ordered. The silence between them settled like smoke. Why now? She asked, after the server left. After all this, after the PR firm, the accounts, the building. Why dinner? Daniel looked at her. For the first time in weeks, really looked at her. So you'd understand, he said calmly. That silence doesn't mean weakness. She scoffed. You think this proves something? He didn't answer, just reached into his blazer and pulled out a small white envelope. Read it. Inside was a single-page letter, typed, formal, notarized. Revocation of power of attorney. Effective immediately. Signed, witnessed, processed. Her eyes flicked up. You're revoking my POA? I already did, he said. I just wanted you to see it in person. She glanced again at the line confirming the removal of her name from all financial oversight roles in the family trust. But there was more. A second page. A list. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Then the names clicked. The foundations. The ones she'd chaired. The Literacy Fund. The Midtown Arts Circle. The Women's Equity Initiative. Her roles, chair, co-founder, brand steward, were all marked vacated. Next to each, the name of a new appointee. And not a single one was her. They're mine, she said quietly, scanning the paper again. These were mine. Daniel sipped his wine. They were yours, because I put your name on the documents. She looked up, eyes wild. You're saying I was a placeholder? I'm saying, he replied, you were a projection. One I created because I thought you believed in the work. When that illusion broke, so did the utility. She sat back hard, the air leaving her lungs. He didn't raise his voice, didn't gloat. And that was worse. You don't have to destroy me to make a point, she said, voice shaking. He tilted his head. This isn't destruction, Sienna. It's subtraction. Quiet. Clean. You subtracted your love. I subtracted everything else. The server returned with their meals. Daniel thanked him. She didn't touch her food. The entire room felt like it was moving around her. Soft conversation, quiet forks against china, a world that no longer required her presence. He wiped his mouth, stood, left cash on the table. No security. No scene, he said. Just a man letting go of what no longer fits. And with that, he walked out, leaving her in a dress that suddenly felt too tight, with perfume no one was breathing in, and a stack of pages that proved she had never really owned the power she wielded. She'd just been borrowing it. And the loan had expired. Kat knocked like she was delivering a eulogy. Soft. Hesitant. 2 beats, then a pause. Sienna opened the door wearing sunglasses and a silk robe at 3 p.m. No makeup. No persona. No curated version of herself. Just a woman standing ankle-deep in the ruins of a life she swore was fireproof. Kat stepped in slowly, holding a small folder and 2 iced coffees. "Didn't know if you'd want one," she said, offering the drink like a peace treaty. Sienna took it wordlessly and dropped onto the couch. Kat remained standing for a moment, fidgeting with the folder. "Okay," she said finally. "I need you to promise not to bite my head off." Sienna raised her sunglasses. "After the week I've had, I might bite off someone's hand if it holds answers." Kat gave a nervous smile. "Fair." She opened the folder and laid out a few printouts, some from public databases, some from internal portals only donors and staff could access. IRS Form 990s, foundation tax filings, donor acknowledgments, board restructuring memos. Sienna stared at the pages, her lips parting slowly. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Patterns," Kat replied. "Daniel told me to look." Not explicitly. Just, he said something at that fundraiser last year. About how silence leaves paper trails if you know where to follow them. I didn't get it until recently. "Wait, he told you to look?" Kat hesitated. "After the Delancey fallout, I ran into him. He asked how you were." I said confused. He just nodded and said, "She should look at the filings. That's where the truth lives." Then he walked away. Sienna grabbed one of the pages. There it was, Midtown Literacy Fund. Chair, Daniel Rourke. Vice Chair, Lydia Park. No mention of Sienna. No archive position. Like she'd never existed in the chain of command. Her hand shook. "But I founded this with him." "No," Kat said gently. "You thought you did. But it was always under his name. You were listed on press releases. Socials. Photos. Never on structure. Never on paper. But the Women's Equity Council. Also his," Kat said. "He used donor-advised funds. Shell contributors. Silent leverage. He made you visible. But the levers." She held up a finger. "Always behind his curtain." Sienna stood suddenly, pacing. Why not tell me?" Kat gave her a look that said, "Come on." Sienna collapsed back onto the couch. The folder slid off her lap. "All this time, I thought he didn't care about appearances. That he was just the quiet guy in the background." Kat nodded. "He is. But not because he's small. Because he's vast. Quiet like a vault. Still like a chess master." Sienna tried to call him. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Blocked. She hurled the phone across the room. It bounced off the cushions and hit the floor. Then she buried her face in a pillow and screamed. Not a cute, dramatic cry. A raw, primal noise that cracked her ribs from the inside. When it ended, the silence roared louder than the scream. Kat didn't move. Just sat beside her, slowly. "I think," she said quietly, "he loved you more than anyone. That's the only reason you were ever allowed that close." Sienna didn't reply. Because she finally understood the truth. She'd never stood beside him. She'd been carried. And now he'd set her down. Gently. But permanently. It hit her like a slap in the middle of an otherwise normal Tuesday. She was sitting at her kitchen island, robe cinched too tightly around her waist, spooning almond yogurt into her mouth with mechanical detachment when her phone buzzed. A Google alert, set to her name, of course. A small vanity ritual she'd created back when publications still cared about her skincare routines and gala gowns. But this one didn't feature her name. It featured his. The silent architect behind Midtown's rise. She stared at the headline, blinking as if it would morph under her gaze. There, front and center, was Daniel, wearing that same navy suit she used to say made him look a little too funeral home, shaking hands with 2 city officials. Behind them, a bronze model of the new performing arts complex. She clicked the article, jaw tightening. While many associate Midtown's cultural expansion with flashy donors and PR-savvy influencers, insiders say the true driving force is Daniel Rourke, a longtime silent backer, strategist, and board consultant whose quiet philanthropy spans over a decade. She read the line 3 times. Then came the next hit. Another article, this one from Civic Culture Weekly. The real donor power behind the art's revival. Same photo, slightly different angle. Daniel with his arm around the mayor, both smiling like they shared a secret no one else had earned the right to hear. Her name didn't appear once. Not in the article. Not in the photo tags. Not even in the past gala supporters blurb at the bottom. Sienna dropped the spoon into the yogurt with a soft plop. Her breath hitched. She opened Instagram. Went straight to the gala's official account. There it was. The event she'd been barred from. She scrolled through the photos, fingers trembling. Daniel at the piano unveiling. Daniel beside the arts commissioner. Daniel giving a brief speech with no mic. Just a handheld note card and a sharp gaze. Then, the worst one. A wide shot. Daniel standing next to the mayor on the steps of the museum. Behind them, flowers, lights, a massive installation in his name. The Rourke Wing for visual integrity. And under it, a caption that made her go cold. Legacy doesn't need volume. It needs clarity. Sienna's ears rang. She'd stood on those very steps just last year, waving at photographers, air-kissing councilwomen, offering sound bites about women in art, while Daniel stood quietly to the side, holding her coat. She thought it was cute. Endearing. Turns out it was camouflage. She was never the lead. She was a decoy. She tried calling 3 board contacts. Voicemail. One texted back an hour later with a single sentence. Daniel asked us not to involve you further. It's already complicated. She wanted to throw her phone again, but didn't. Instead, she just kept scrolling. There were comments under each photo. Finally, the real name behind the work. This guy's been pulling strings for years. Proof that you don't need to shout to be powerful. No one asked where she was. No one missed her. The world that once clung to her name had moved on. Gracefully, quietly, with no exit announcement. Just a clean cut and a new headline. She wasn't edited out. She was never written in. And now, she could only watch, helpless, as the man she underestimated rewrote everything without her. She refreshed the page again, just to be sure. Still gone. The website of the Aurora Women's Equity Collective, once the crown jewel of her social persona, looked pristine, modern, and entirely void of her. No mention in the About Us section. No photo in the gallery from last year's summit, where she'd spoken on a panel and gotten a standing ovation for her unapologetic clarity. The Our Founders page had a new layout, minimalist portraits, brief bios, soft-focused professionalism. And right at the top, in clean serif font, Daniel Rourke, founding patron. She scrolled faster, hoping to find her name buried in a legacy mention. Nothing. Her title, co-chair, development lead, strategic advisor, had been wiped like a dry erase board. She clicked the old team email group she used to moderate. Bounced. She tried her direct email. Undeliverable. She didn't even know when the edit had happened. That was the worst part. It wasn't a scandal. No public fallout. No messy war. Just a quiet deletion. Still, she dressed in beige silk and heels and showed up to the collective's fall showcase anyway. She told herself she was attending as a supporter, that she didn't need her name and lights to care about the cause. But deep down, she needed to be seen. Needed proof that this world hadn't shifted entirely without her. The gallery was buzzing with polite conversation, tasteful jazz, and chilled Prosecco. Nobody stopped her at the door. No one said she couldn't enter. But nobody looked her in the eye either. Not the volunteers she once trained. Not the women who once asked for photo ops beside her. Not even Kat. She spotted her by the refreshments table, chatting with one of the new board members. Their eyes met across the room for a heartbeat. Kat's expression flickered, recognition, regret, then something else. She looked away. Sienna's heels clicked across the marble as she made a full loop of the event. No one stopped her. No one addressed her. No one acknowledged her presence beyond polite nods. She was there, but she wasn't in. By the time she made it back to her building, the heels felt like bricks. The doorman didn't meet her eyes either. She took the elevator up. Keycard still worked, for now. Then she saw it. A cream-colored envelope taped cleanly to her apartment door. No stamp. No return address. Just her name written in even, machine-perfect font. She opened it with trembling fingers. Notice of vacated guest privileges. Effective immediately. Below that, a single line of text. Per the revised lease agreement, your temporary occupancy status has been reviewed and revoked. She read it 3 times. Then once more, slower. The apartment she'd called home. The building she'd once curated influencer shoots in. The rooftop garden she once claimed to design, gone. She backed into the door. Slid down until she was sitting on the cold hallway floor. Neighbors passed. Some glanced. No one stopped. Sienna clutched the letter to her chest like a parachute that wouldn't open. The world hadn't just moved on, it had restructured. And she hadn't even made the footnotes. The apartment was too quiet. Not serene. Not peaceful. Just dead. The walls still held shadows of her curated past, an abstract painting she never understood, 2 velvet chairs she'd insisted on for symmetry, and a dozen photo frames lined up on the console. One by one, those frames had gone dark. Not physically, but emotionally. Tonight, Sienna sat barefoot on the couch, an untouched glass of red wine in one hand and her phone in the other. Her thumb scrolled through old photos with robotic precision. There they were at that rooftop party. The night she wore emerald and he wore navy. Everyone said they looked like power incarnate. She remembered posing, smirking, thinking, God, he looks like a professor next to me. Another shot, them in Paris, on the bridge. Her hand in his pocket. His eyes not on the camera, but on her. She kept scrolling. Through birthdays, fundraisers, dinners. Every image showed a man who had always been there. Not loud, not grand, but present, unwavering. And then she stopped. One photo, from early days. Daniel mid-laugh, glass in hand, her arms wrapped around his neck. She stared at it for a long time, eyes burning. Then, without planning to, she hit the call button. The line rang once. Then, click. He answered. Her breath caught. Daniel. Silence on the other end. Calm. Expectant. She swallowed. Do you even care what's happening? More silence. Then his voice, measured, cool. You said you cared, he replied, but weren't in love. That sentence landed like a blade. She shut her eyes. That's not what I... He didn't interrupt. Didn't hang up. Just waited. She tried again, voice cracking. Please. Just tell me. Who are you really? There was a soft exhale. Not cruel. Not triumphant. Just real. I'm the man, he said slowly. You thought was replaceable. Click. The line went dead. The room pulsed with silence. No music. No street noise. No footsteps. She didn't cry. Not at first. She just sat there. Frozen. Phone in her lap. Wine untouched. Breath shallow. All the power games. The image building. The curated life. None of it had prepared her for the kind of silence that speaks louder than vengeance. It wasn't his absence that undid her. It was knowing, deep in her bones, that he had always been more than she allowed herself to see. And now, he was gone. Not as a warning, but as a conclusion.